What's up, everybody? This is Alex from The Duran, and I have with me Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of TheDuran.com. And today we're going to be talking about Greece expelling 2 Russian diplomats. Alexander, we had some news coming in today that the Greek government has expelled 2 diplomats, and I believe it's considering expelling another 2, or not allowing another 2 diplomats into the country. This was reported on by the popular Greek newspaper, Kathimerini. And this precedes the NATO summit, which obviously Greece is a member of, and will be attending, where they will be meeting with their European peers, and as well as Donald Trump, the United States. What's going on with this expulsion of the diplomats? Just a preface to our viewers, the Greek government is saying that it's tied into the recent decision with FYROM to call the FYROM region, the FYROM country, North Macedonia. That was a decision that they took a couple of weeks ago. They finally resolved the name dispute. And that's what the Greek government is saying it's tied into. Of course, the Russian government, the Russian press has said there's no basis in this allegation. So tell us what's going on, Alexander, the background of this, and why you think this is happening so close to the NATO summit.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the NATO summit, because, of course, that's an important point to bear in mind. The other thing to say is that, of course, the other thing that's happening is that Sergei Lavrov, who is the Russian foreign minister, is actually in the process of preparing a long-prepared and arranged visit to Greece. Greece has always been a country that's been on good terms with Russia. The Greeks are saying, or rather the Greek government is saying, that this is a case of Russian interference in Greek internal politics. There's no real explanation of how Russia is interfering in Greek internal politics. There's no real sign of that. It seems to me that yet again what we're seeing here is the Greek government of Mr. Tsipras showing to the Europeans, to people like Angela Merkel ahead of a very difficult NATO summit, that they are totally loyal to NATO, to the EU, to the whole Atlanticist system, more loyal even than the United States under Donald Trump is nowadays, completely contradicting their old former promises of independence. They're also using the Russian bogey in the same way as lots of other European governments have been doing as the cause, the explanation for their internal problems, the way in which the Macedonian thing has not played well with the people of Greece. We've done a previous video about all of that. And, of course, in doing so, they're damaging the relations between Russia and Greece, which historically have always been very strong.
Now, the organization that they're saying the Russian diplomats were getting bribed by in order to influence the agreement between Tsipras and Zaev over the name dispute in Macedonia, and let me get that name, is called the Imperial Orthodox Palestine Society. And basically the claim is that the Russians use this organization to then infiltrate Mount Athos, which is basically the Greek Orthodox Church. Many churches are there, but it's considered the Greek Orthodox stronghold of the church. And of course, the Greek Orthodox Church sways a lot of opinion in Greece. What do you think of this dot connection as to how how the Greek government's explaining this infiltration and this meddling in their government?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely daft. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. I mean, first of all, the thing to say about Athos is that to a great extent it's supposed to be self-governing. Secondly, I mean, it's not, Athos is not directly involved in Greek politics. Thirdly, the Orthodox Church certainly is in Greece in certain things, but I mean, not in anything like the way that is being alleged here. And the idea that the Russians would be spending time, energy, money to bribe their way into Athos, they've no need to, because there are lots of Russian Orthodox people in Athos, which is not surprising, because Athos is a Orthodox, international Orthodox religious community, And Russia is by far the biggest Orthodox country. So the whole thing is absolutely daft. It doesn't make any kind of sense at all. But of course it does play up to one particular meme that has been spread, especially in the United States and Britain, incidentally, which is that the Russians are trying to use the Orthodox Church in some sort of sinister way to create a pro-Russian Orthodox international. I mean, to my mind, that is a nonsensical idea. But, I mean, it's exactly the kind of idea that you can imagine someone like Tsipras and his neoliberal leftist party and people like that, they might buy into. I mean, it's an absurd idea from my mind, but there we are. I mean, they bought into it and they're promoting it. You know?
As an expert in Russian affairs and the way the Russian government operates, especially geopolitically, is this a way that the Russian government or the Kremlin or the Russian Orthodox Church, whatever it may be, even wealthy Russian oligarchs, say, who want to exert influence, is this the way that they exert influence or meddle or get their point across to other governments? Is this how they operate in real practical terms?
In a word, no. I mean, that isn't at all how they operate. The Russian government always operates on a government-to-government basis. As far as they're concerned, their major concern is to get on with the government of Greece. And that's always been the way they work. They obviously have other contacts there. They have economic contacts. They have business people that they work with. But, I mean, as I said, the idea that they would do it in this strange way, using the Orthodox Church, is frankly nonsense. It's never happened. As I said, only in the imaginations of some strange people in America and Britain, and now it turns out, bizarrely, it seems, in Greece, would anybody really believe that? I mean, it just isn't like this at all. And yes, there are some very wealthy business people in Russia who are Orthodox and who take a great deal of interest in the Orthodox world and in Orthodox things. I mean, I don't know how influential they are in Russia. My feeling is actually probably not very influential. But I mean, those are their views. They have their ideas. They're entitled to their ideas. They're entitled to promote them within the Orthodox community in Russia, and to see whether people in Greece and other Orthodox countries hear them. It doesn't mean that they have the Russian government behind them, and it doesn't mean that they're following the Russian government's agenda. More often than not, those sort of people who we're talking about are actually in conflict with the Russian government on various things.
Okay, so that's out of the way then. Let's focus on Tsipras and the Greek government and the radical left Syriza. What is Tsipras then trying to accomplish by creating this latest Russia meddling hoax, narrative, conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to go back to the point that you made right at the beginning about Macedonia. I mean, Macedonia is a very big issue in Greece. People in Greece are very concerned about it, and they're very angry with what Tsipras has done. And many people within the electoral bloc that have traditionally supported Tsipras, they're very angry about it also. I mean, I think the thing a lot of people perhaps outside Greece don't understand is that in Greece, the left has always up to now been patriotic. So a lot of people in Greece are nationalists and patriotic, not just right-wing people. He has gone completely against this. He has offended his own electoral base. So what he is doing, it seems to be, is what seems to be, as I said, the usual practice now, which is blame it all on Russia. The Russians are involved in some sort of sinister game. They've got the Orthodox Church on their side. They're pursuing some kind of pan-Slavist policy, all crazy stuff, nothing to do with what the Russians are really doing. But that is the sort of signal, I think, that Tsipras is trying to send. So that's the domestic one. And as I said, the foreign one, the external one, I think directed mainly at the Germans, who are, let's be quite clear now, the paymasters of Greece, is to say to them, look, we are absolutely loyal. You can rely on us. We are not a pro-Russian stalking horse, as some people in the West seem to think we are. We are a completely loyal, paid-up member of the European Union and of NATO. And this, I would add, of a party, Syriza, and of the leadership of that party, including Tsipras, who, after they were elected, were actually investigated by Western and specifically, it seems, German intelligence agencies to find out whether they did in fact have any links to Russia.
So I think, yeah, and I think one of the key threads here is NATO, and you have a NATO summit. And I think it's worth mentioning and worth explaining to our viewers, Alexandra, that this new state, North Macedonia, as to what it's going to be called if everything goes through the correct procedures and the votes, is going to get admitted to NATO in the future. And so how does that tie into this, North Macedonia getting into NATO and all of a sudden Greece coming out and saying, Russia did it, Russia meddled?
Well, again, I think you put your finger on an important thing, because, of course, one of the other sort of absurd things that you're hearing spread around is that there's some sort of vast Russian plot in the Western Balkans that the Russians are supposedly playing with the Serbs, and they're trying supposedly to create problems in Macedonia, and we need to bring in Northern Macedonia, as it's going to now be called, into NATO in order to secure NATO's Balkan flank. To give you some idea of how obsessive some people are about all of this, in the middle of all the crisis about Brexit, the British government is actually holding a conference in London, bringing together all the various states of the Western Balkans to discuss this very issue. Boris Johnson, just before he resigned, was supposed to turn up and talk to it. So, I mean, this is the kind of, I think, absolutely absurd thinking that we see. And the reason Northern Macedonia has been called Northern Macedonia, the reason Tsipras has had his arm twisted to recognize that fact, the reason all of these things are being done is to bring all of these countries into NATO and into the EU so that the Russians can be kept out of the Balkans, where supposedly they pose this great existential threat.
And so, to me, it's almost like Tsipras is cutting off his nose despite his face, because Greece has always had very good relations with Russia, both geopolitically as well as economically. There's a lot of interdependence, a lot of trade. There's a lot of tourism that's flowing through Greece from Russia. And so, how do you see this? In closing, how do you see this latest kowtowing to Merkel and to this whole Russia did it narrative? Do you think this is going to affect the relationship between Greece and Russia going into the future? And do you think this is going to bring Russia closer to Greece's arch enemy, Turkey?
Well, I think, again, I'm very glad that you mentioned this, because, of course, Russia is getting closer to Turkey. I mean, whatever else Erdogan is, he's not stupid, and he's come to realize that a good relationship with Russia serves Turkey's interests. There is huge sentimental feeling towards Greece and Russia. I mean, I've encountered it myself. A Russian I came across once said to me that for us, Greece is as important to Russia and to Russian civilization as Italy, with its Renaissance, is to the West. That is how strongly the Russians feel. Now, the Russians have put out statements saying what has just happened is not going to affect our relationship with Greece. I'm afraid I think it will. I think the Russians are going to be much more suspicious. I don't think they've ever had much time for Tsipras ever since he told them that he would turn up to a Victory Day parade in Moscow in May 2015 and failed to do so. But I think they will start to say to themselves, do we really have any friends in the political system in Greece? And I'm afraid they will probably conclude that they probably don't, at least not of anybody of any real importance, because, to be very clear, Mr. Mitsotakis and his New Democracy Party are also loyal members of the Atlantic system. So I think the Russians will probably say, well, if at the end of the day, Greece, we may have all these sentimental feelings for Greece, but Greece is not our ally. It is not a country we can count on. Maybe it is better for us to continue to work with Erdogan and Turkey, which is an important country for us, which is buying Russian weapons, which we're building this gas pipeline to, which is a partner with us in Syria, and which has this huge influence in Central Asia, where Russia has all these great interests. So I think this is a bad policy for Greece, an extremely bad one. And one would like to think that there would be important people in Greece who would speak out against it. I don't see that at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that my feeling is that Putin never had any much respect for Tsipras. I think it shows. And it has showed in the past, and vice versa. Tsipras, I think, was never too hot on the Russian government, as is.
I think what happened, actually, I just want to quickly touch on that, was that shortly after he was elected, he turned up in Moscow. The Russians were very interested in him. Putin met him. And I think they were extremely unimpressed. They felt that he was only there to play them off against the Germans, and that he was always far more interested in the end in staying with the Germans and with the Americans, so that he was just using them. Yeah. And I think the Russians are very, very skilled at seeing through that, and I think they never forgot it, and they never fully forgave it either. So I think Mr. Putin will not be sorry to see the back of Mr. Tsipras, and I think Mr. Tsipras is going to be gone very soon. Yeah, that's my own view anyway.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think Putin, caught on to Tsipras way early and understood the double game that he was playing. And I think you're also right that soon the Russian government, as well as NATO and the U.S. and Trump, are going to be dealing with a different leader in Greece. But that's a fantastic analysis to a very interesting story that's not getting reported on much. But it is a fascinating story that broke today. Guys, if you like these videos, click on the subscribe button down below. Also click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we put out a new video. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of The Duran. Thank you for a really good analysis on what's going on in Greece with the expulsion of the 2 Russian diplomats. Guys, visit the Duran shop as well. I almost forgot that. Visit the Duran shop as well. Pick up a t-shirt. I'm wearing one right now. Pick up a t-shirt. Help support the Duran. Until next time, take care.